Hey everyone, I wanted to give you my deep sleepers at the running back position in fantasy football from the 2025 NFL Draft. So any late round running backs we're going to be talking about, if they have relevance and if they have a chance to start. You never know what can happen throughout training camp and the season. So here we go. We're going to start with the highest drafted players. Number 1 is Woody Marks on the Houston Texans. He was picked in the mid-4th round. The Texans moved up to get him. He was projected to be somewhere around a 7th round pick, was my understanding. So, a little high for this guy, but obviously the Texans like him. It's always a key sign when teams move up for players, which is the case here. He only weighs 207, but that's big enough in today's NFL. I don't think many teams had him ranked this highly, or maybe they did, and the mock drafters were the ones who were off. You always have to keep that in mind. So, Woody Marks, potentially a starter after Joe Mixon gets out of the way in Houston. A guy whose name everyone should keep in mind, Dylan Sampson on the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, they chose Quinshon Judkins near the top of the 2nd round. That would lead you to believe that he's their starter. However, Dylan Sampson is a name that everyone should keep in their minds throughout the summer. He was a later draft pick than Quinshon Judkins near the end of the 4th round. However, even though he only weighs 200, a lot of people I heard talk about him potentially being a starter in the National Football League. So I think the Browns made this pick. I mentioned in my previous video about the Travis Hunter trade. You can check that out. But I mentioned Dylan Sampson is kind of a depth piece for the Browns that they actually needed, but he can also really play, so someone to keep an eye on. Number 3 is Jordan James for the 49ers. He was picked with the 9th selection in the 5th round. The only reason I mentioned Jordan James is because he had a lot of success at Oregon, and the Niners are always drafting running backs, and you never know who can emerge, especially now with Christian McCaffrey being, I guess he's fine now, but I'm pretty skeptical. We'll find out during training camp. And even if he is fine, Jordan Mason has been traded to the Vikings. They have Isaac Guerendo, who played a little bit last year. But if anything happens to McCaffrey, which as we go along here and Father Time catches up to him, there's going to be a lot more reasons why Christian McCaffrey might miss games. So Jordan James is an attractive option to grab late in drafts. Devin Neal was chosen by the New Orleans Saints in the 6th round, and this is a running back where in a year where there were so many good running back prospects, it's hard to know exactly if teams more or less had them ranked the same, if they had them ranked vastly differently, and if some teams really believe these guys are late round picks, or if they just figured they could wait because there's so many good ones. Devin Neal is an example of that. He went in the 6th round. I think a lot of people thought he could go in the 3rd or 4th round. Ran a little slow at the combine, but just kind of does everything pretty well. The reason I highlight Devin Neal is because Alvin Kamara turns 30 at the end of July. And once that happens, Alvin Kamara is still a great player. He still put up really good numbers last year. I think he had almost 1,500 total yards and I think 8 touchdowns. Pretty solid stuff. But he's not getting any younger. The runway could be cleared for Devin Neal at some point. Obviously, Kendre Miller isn't the answer. He struggles to stay on the field health-wise, and it seems like he struggles to get out on the field when he is healthy, probably because of all those injuries and all those missed practices. So Devin Neal is a guy that, if Alvin Kamara starts slowing down, this is a player that could emerge. We've got a bunch more here because this list is pretty long, and this is just late round running backs that have a chance to start. So you can tell this is a pretty big year for running backs in the draft. The next name is Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech. He was chosen in the 6th round by the Cincinnati Bengals. And listen, Chase Brown had a way better year than I thought he would last year. And I don't know if he's giving up that starter job very easily. He looked pretty good. However, Chase Brown was only a 5th round pick, so could a 6th round pick take the job from him? I think it's possible. And Taj Brooks is another guy. I don't think he was projected to go super high, but he was a guy that a lot of people liked. and a lot of people thought he could sneak into the 4th round. So is he going to take the job from Chase Brown this summer? I highly doubt it, but could things change? I think they absolutely could. And you're looking for players when you're drafting in Dynasty or just like late round lotto tickets, you're looking for guys that have a path to play. And I wouldn't quite phrase it that way for Taj Brooks. But listen, he's got one guy to beat for the job. And a lot of these guys, including some of the guys I named, but a lot of guys I won't be naming, they have more than one guy to beat. And that combined with a late round pedigree, it's usually not that likely that these guys are going to get a lot of touches. But I'm highlighting the guys that would have a chance, and I think Taj Brooks absolutely does have a chance. We're getting into the 7th round now, and I actually have literally 5 guys to talk about that were drafted in the 7th round. The first one is Damian Martinez from Miami. Bigger guy, weighs around 225, I believe. More of a bruiser back. Interesting that Seattle took him here. Another guy that people thought could go in the mid-rounds. More of a, like I said, a bowling ball type player. But it's kind of unclear what's going to happen with Ken Walker. Zach Charbonnet is there as well. So you do have 2 guys he has to beat. But that might change next season or the season after next. And Martinez has the pedigree of a guy that we thought was going to go a little bit higher. I heard one speculation or rumor or report that his weight fluctuated at Miami. I don't know if that's true or not. That's the only concrete reason I've ever heard anyone give for him dropping to the 7th round. A lot of people had him right around round 4. Next, we have Brashard Smith for the Kansas City Chiefs. He went to SMU, was drafted in the 7th round. This guy is more of a receiver. He's very small, about 195, but he was a receiver first, and then he became a running back. He can kind of do a little bit of everything, and he's a speedy guy too. So that's always going to be interesting on the Chiefs with Andy Reid and Mahomes. It seems like Pacheco's been racked up pretty good. He was a 7th round pick himself. How much juice does he really have over the long term? It's hard to say, but there are some running back touches potentially there in Kansas City. Brashard Smith is a great lottery ticket. Kyle Monangai from the Chicago Bears went to Rutgers, drafted in the 7th round. This is a guy where he's on a team that people thought they would take a running back earlier, and they didn't. So now they have DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, and the only other notable name is Kyle Monangai from Rutgers. I like this guy's tape a lot for whatever that's worth. I'm not a scout or anything, but he was one of the guys that I thought, why can't this guy go in the 4th round? He ran a little slow, so that's one reason. You see a pattern here with some of these guys. But I thought he was very similar to Devin Neal. Maybe not the fastest guy, but he can move well enough. He's big enough, and he does everything sort of well. So I think he's a good player. And with Roschon Johnson just kind of relegating himself to a backup role, I think after 3 years, we can safely assume that Kyle Monangai has a chance to be the backup behind DeAndre Swift. And after that, if anything happened to Swift, it is wheels up for Monangai potentially. So this is a rising offense, and I would be interested in this player if I was looking for a running back who might end up starting at some point this year. 2 more guys. These are kind of like super lottery tickets, but I like Phil Maffa from Clemson, the running back that was drafted by the Cowboys near the end of the draft, because frankly, they drafted Jaden Blue in the 5th round, who's a player I like, but Jaden Blue has fumbling issues. He's really small. I think he weighs around 196. He's more of a passing game threat than a running threat. And I think Phil Maffa could end up being the bruiser for the Cowboys. He weighs 234. That's pretty freaking big. So if they're looking for a bell cow, if he can make the roster and make an impact at practice, he could be their starter. That is not out of the question. Lastly, this is a super deep cut, more so than any of the other guys here, and that is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, also known as JCM, who went to Arizona amongst other places and was drafted by the Commanders near the end of the 7th round. This player only played 1 game in college last year due to an NCAA ruling that was kind of sketchy, and it seems like the NCAA kind of got it wrong. It was a question about how many eligible college football years that Merritt had, and they declared that he was out of years and he couldn't play last year. So he only played one game. Now, you can read about that story. It's kind of controversial. The NCAA, it really seems like they screwed it up. But this guy looks really good on tape, and the Commanders kind of need someone next to Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson, who is an okay running back, he's going to be 26. He's going to need a new contract. So JCM might get some run because he's a talented player that fell for extracurricular reasons, like he barely got to play last year, but he wasn't hurt. So this is an interesting guy that I wouldn't forget about. And while I like Brian Robinson well enough, I think that he severely lacks upside. So maybe JCM could give the Commanders that and end up stealing some touches gradually over the course of the year. So those are all my mid to late round deep sleeper running backs this year from the NFL draft. And listen, a lot of these guys aren't going to pan out. A handful of them might not even make the team. But, you got to take some chances and you got to play some lottery tickets in fantasy. Whether it's dynasty or even in a redraft league, I would consider drafting these guys as my last running back or my last pick if I had room. And I think one of them or two of them, maybe more, is going to really show something this year. And we're going to be wishing we drafted one or two of these guys. Finding out which one is just part of the fun. So hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think. Talk to you later.